All right, we're starting to write more and more tests, but up until now, we've only worked with some simple components. What if we want to work with something like a container that app.js is? We have all this map state to props. It's also a connected component. How do we test with that? Let's give it a try. I'm going to create a new file and call it app.test.js. And this app.test.js, again, we can just go through the motions and copy one of the last tests. Let's just do this. And this time, instead of counter button, it's going to be app. And again, we won't receive any colors. Let's just run this and see what happens. Oh, actually, let me delete this as well. Save. All right, I'm getting some errors. It says expect to render app component, which is over here. But I'm getting an error saying that invariant violation could not find store in either the context or props of connect app. All right, so let's just mock a store. We can say const mock store equals, let's say, an empty object for now. Or let's just do the robots of an empty array, and let's do search term or a search field that is an empty string. And we'll just pass this mock store as the store prop. Let's save. And oh boy, I'm getting store.getState is not a function. And that makes sense, right? If you remember, our store isn't just an empty object or a dummy object. I mean, it is in Redux terms, but it also came with all these other things that we didn't really think about when we installed Redux. We had getState, subscribe, and all these other methods that came with it. So that means we have to mock this entire list of store methods that Redux comes up with. And if Redux updates and adds something new in the future, well, we're going to have to update that as well. And luckily for us, there's tools that already do this for you. For example, there's a package called Redux mock store that you can use to actually mock this store and have these proper methods on it. And that's an npm package that we can install. But I want to take a different route. I want to take a route of simplicity. Because right now, looking at this app.js file, we're doing a lot of things. And I like simple tests. Tests that test simple things. And this app.js is frankly a little bit complicated because we have this connect. So it's technically not even rendering the app, it's rendering connect. And then that is wrapped by app. Let me show you what I mean. If I go back to our app and open up our React developer tools, you might have to download this plugin if you don't have it already. I see that my app is a provider and then a connect app. So this app, what we're actually testing is this connect component that is wrapping the app. And only inside of it, we have the app and then header, search box, scroll, and so on and so forth. Let's simplify this. Why not just test our app instead of testing our connected component? And this is what I like to do when I test things. Instead of trying to test a really complicated component, I ask myself, is this component as simple as it can be? Is there better things that I can do with code to make it more testable, which usually results in better code overall? So looking at this app component does two main things. One, it connects to the Redux store through all this map state to props and map dispatch to props, but it also renders a ton of these things. So let's separate this out. I'm going to create a new component file and call it main.page.js. So you can think of this as the homepage of our RoboFriends app. And now this main page will also have a test file. So I'm going to move the app.test.js to actually be renamed to main page and put it into the components folder. All right, our tests are failing, but that's because we have our names all off. So let's go about this step by step. Let's make app.js be worried about just connecting and receiving props from the store, and make our main page be concerned with rendering all this homepage stuff. So how can we do this? Well, the very first step is I'm going to copy the entire app.js file, go to our main page, copy and paste it, and right off the bat, remove all the Redux things because I don't need anything Redux. This is going to be a simple component that's not connected to a Redux store. So I'm going to remove the connect. I'm going to remove any of the actions and just leave our components. I'm going to remove the map state to props, map dispatch to props. And I'm going to rename this to main page component. And we don't have a CSS file for it. Or maybe we should move this app.js to our main page. So for now, I'm just going to create something quickly. I'm going to say new file, mainpage.css. And by the way, you're starting to see why we might want to have a better folder structure than just files, files, files. We might want to have components and a component folder for each one of these components. And I'm just going to copy and paste here. And going back to our main page, we now have the CSS. We have the constructor, and I don't know why we have our count in here. I don't think we need the count. It's not using it at all. So let's just remove that. So we don't need a constructor. And in our main page, again, there's no constructor. We have the component did mount because, well, we want to request robots. And we have our regular render. But we also don't have our connect anymore. We're just simply rendering our main page. All right, so we've removed this and made this into a simple app that still has the component did mount, but that's just props that we received from the store. All right, so let's go into app.js and now remove the app part because we don't really need that anymore, or we don't need the render part. We just need the connected component. So again, in here now for our render, all we really need to do is, well, remove all of this. Feels nice removing stuff and making files smaller. And all we need is the main page component to render, right? So we can remove all these component imports and just import the main page component. Again, another reason I love React is everything is just so nice and simple to move components around. But look what we've just done really, really quickly. Oh, and we definitely don't need component did mount because we're doing that in the main page. So look how small that component just got. How nice is that? And now this app component just turned into a super simple container component. And this is an architectural decision that I really, really like because we don't really need to even test this, do we? Because all we're doing is just using the connect function to grab the state and dispatch events from our Redux store. So even writing tests for this, although we could do it, we're just simply testing the functionality of Redux. And that's something that Redux library already does. It already has tests and people working to make sure that it works properly. This component now becomes something so simple that we might not even need to test. And we've moved all our logic that we can test to the main page component. And that's something really important to think about, to always try and make your tests easy. If they're not, then perhaps there's something in your code that you can simplify. And you can see how elegant of a solution this is. The last thing we really want to do is just pass down these props down to the main page. To do that, we can just use some destructuring or object spread to say this dot props. Let's save. And I actually haven't tested this code, so make sure it still works. Let's run npm start. I'm sure there's something that we may have missed. Let's close this. All right, we have your render method should have a return statement. And yep, we need to actually return from this render statement. That's silly of us. Let's return. And we have a bit of an issue with the CSS, and that is because it can't find the Sega font. So that's a simple fix. We just go to the URL and do, because the Sega font is in the containers, we can just simply do containers for now, even though we probably want to move this around for now for demonstration purposes. That's fine. Everything is passing. If I go back, I see that there's a few other errors. We have the count of null, and we're passing the count state in here in the header component. But if you remember, our header component has the counter button that actually has its own state. So looks like we're doing this for no reason. So let's just remove that from the, where is it? From the main page.js. So we can just remove that, save, go back. All right, everything is working. Make sure our searching works. Yeah, everything is working. Count is working. If I open up my React developer tools, nope, not Redux, we want React. We have the provider. We have the connected app, but check this out. We now have the main page that we can test. And this main page now is more accessible for us using Enzyme Ingest. So let's write some tests here. We're going to go into the main page.tests. All right, let's first change the name to main page, which is what we're testing now. And because I feel like we're going to be doing this a lot and passing down some props, there's a neat little trick that we can do. Let's say we're going to have a let wrapper, and I'm going to remove this for now. And we can use something called before each. Again, comes with Jest and other testing frameworks. And this makes sure that it runs before each one of our tests. Now in here, we simply give it a function. And inside of this function, we can say what should run before each one of our tests. In our case, we want to mock props. And these mock props, well, what are we going to have? We're going to have the on request robots, which if you remember, let's close this and close this so it's a little bit cleaner. If you remember, main page has the on request robots function. So we can just do the jest function here, which we've seen before with mocking. So we're just saying that this is just a simple function. Don't worry about actually doing the API call. We'll say that robots is an empty array. That search field is going to be an empty string. and that is pending will be set to false. And then finally, because we have this for each or before each, we're going to say that the wrapper is going to equal the shallow rendered main page. And this main page, again, just like we did in our app.js, can just receive the props, that is the mock props. So this is going to receive all these properties just like we did in app.js. See that over here? All right, so let's save here. I'm going to go back to running npm test. And we have a few errors because, well, that's not semicolon, that's comma. My arch nemesis, the comma. And we get an error saying that our test suites must contain one test because we haven't written one yet. We just wrote the before each. Now, let's start off with the basics. It renders main page without crashing. And we'll say that, well, we can use our favorite test tool, snapshot testing. We can just say expect wrapper, because now we have access to this wrapper that is shallow rendered because before each is going to run before this test. And I'll say to match snapshot. I love how easy this is. Let's save. And what did I mess up here? Wow, I am terrible at writing commas. All right, there you go. You must be just laughing at me right now with all the commas that I miss while I code. But hey, we're all human here. We all make mistakes. I don't think there's ever a perfect developer that doesn't make mistakes while coding. If there are, well, I'm very jealous of them. All right, let's test another thing. Let's say that I wanted to make sure that it filters the robots correctly. So I'll say it filters robots correctly. And I'm just going to say that in here, we expect the wrapper. And how do we do this? If we go to mainpage.js, we have filter robots in here. But that's happening in the render function. So let's just clean this up and say that we have the filter robots. And this filter robots will receive the robots, and it's going to, let's make it an arrow function. And we can just grab this and just return our filtered robots. We're going to need the search field here. So I'm going to say this dot props dot search field to lowercase. And now within here, we can just say that filtered robots is coming from this dot filtered robots. Let's just make sure this runs. I'm going to go back and run npm start. And it looks like I made a mistake somewhere here. We need to actually pass down the robots. So let's just say it's going to receive the robots. Or we can even do this up over here. For now, let's just leave it like that and make sure we have our naming correct here. Filter robots. Let's go back. All right, it's still working. So now that I've made this a little bit cleaner in our render function, and let's just remove the search field from here. There you go. How can I actually test this? We can now just simply test this method on the main page class. Well, we can just now use the instance property that comes with Enzyme. And now this instance is going to give us access to all the methods that main page has, including filter robots. So let's say in our test, I'm going to move this around. I'm going to say dot filter robots. It's going to run filter robots with, let's say, an empty array. And we expect that to equal an empty array. So let's save and run npm start or npm test. We have a failed test. Oh, and I made a bit of a mistake here. The expect should be around this entire thing. We want to expect that the filter robots runs, and we want it to equal the empty array. Let's save. All right, everything is passing, but let's test other cases because, well, this is most likely not going to be the case. Let's say that this time around, in this statement only, even though we're getting the before each, and we have access to the wrapper, this time around, we want to have a special case where the mock props is going to have a search field of A. And in here, we have a robot that is, let's say, ID 3 with a name of John and email. We'll leave username out of it for now. john@gmail.com. Let's save this and create a new expect statement now. And just for this test, we're going to use a different wrapper. So let's just say a wrapper with, and I know this is not the cleanest, but I'm trying to illustrate a point here, so bear with me. So let's do mock props 2, and this is going to be wrapper 2. So let's save wrapper 2, save. And it says filters robots correctly. And you know what? I just realized I think a better way for us to do filter robots, for now at least, is we can forget about the props and we can just do this dot props dot robots. So going back here, we can now remove these arrays, so just looks a little bit cleaner. And let's make this test pass. We get a bit of an error here because we need to do const wrapper2 because wrapper is not defined. Remember, we have to define it. And our tests pass because our search field is A, and we only have robots with John and john@gmail.com. But if I change this to John, oh, it fails because we expected to equal the actual robots with John in it. For now, we can just say that we expect this array to be returned, and I'm going to remove the first one. Let's save. Oh, and I have extra array brackets here. Again, this is good. Our tests are failing and we're working towards passing them. All right, and now we know that filters robots correctly is working.